STS Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I have waiting in the green room my co-host with the most, Gene Jackson. How's it going, Gene?
It is going great, BT. How are you doing?
Man, I'm hotter than a bag. No, I already used that. Hotter than hell. How's that? It's so freaking hot here. Over 100 degrees in Arkansas with the heat index. That's Skyscan Weather brought to you by fine folks down there at spunklube.com. But just hot, it's not stinky like it usually is. It feels like Vegas heat. You ever been to Vegas where it feels like somebody's just blowing an air conditioner heater on your face all the time?
I've never been to Vegas, unfortunately.
Oh, it's horrible. Correct that one today. But yeah, hot. I know Alabama's cool right now, right?
Oh, it's lovely. It's so brisk and breezy, and you wouldn't want to be anywhere else besides maybe Mississippi.
I worked Mississippi in the middle of summer in Oxford, Mississippi one time, and I worked for Pizza Hut, and I want to tell you that was the wettest summer. Oh my God, I would never. I can't even imagine. Don't they have an army base or a base in Mississippi? Biloxi, right?
Yeah, they got a. Biloxi's got the Army base, and Columbus has got the Air Force base.
Can you imagine being in the middle of summer doing boot camp?
Oh my God, just kill me.
Yes, I know. And being fat, it does. It don't help. This heat is not good for a fat person. All right, no. We're going to not talk about heat or fat people anymore. Well, maybe we will. I don't know. There might be a fat person on here, but we're going to talk about something that you grabbed with Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
See. So you're going to announce that right out of the gate that I picked this one, huh?
Well, yeah. That's right, Gene. You picked it out. We're going to be watching Smoky Mountain Wrestling, March the 13th, 1993.
Rosie walked by when I was watching this one, and she said, "What are you watching?" I said, "I'm watching Smoky Mountain Show. It's our show for it wasn't really that good this month." And she's like, "Oh, good. Brian picked one that wasn't 100 years old." And I go, "No, I picked this one." She goes, "Oh, okay."
Not 100 years old. Hey, we've done good. I got a good record going the last couple of months, so been a pretty good show. So we're going to talk about Smoky Mountain in March of 1993, and was it really that good? Just real quick, Smoky Mountain ended in 95. And it ended because, well, they weren't making any money. So Cornette tells the story whether he decided to finish the year and try to get through, or just go ahead and stop and take his losses. So apparently he stopped, paid everybody. He tells a story where he said he pays everybody but the asshole TV people. So I don't know what that meant. Maybe he didn't pay people that were assholes to him who actually put his television on their channel. So I don't know. This show reminds me so much of Memphis wrestling. Does it remind you of that?
Yes. What endeared me to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I didn't get to watch a lot of it as it went. Most of it was tape trading down the line, but two favorite old school promotions was Memphis and Continental, Southeastern.
Yes.
And Smoky Mountain was like you took those two. It was like peanut butter and jelly. You took those two and smashed them together, and you get Smoky Mountain, and that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, and then we had a huge Smoky Mountain versus SWA feud. Maybe sometime we'll sit down and go through some of that stuff. I remember it being fantastic, so that would be something. So we're going to go through this show, and we're going to answer, was it really that good? 3 months in a row, I got that right. First matchup was Tim Horner against Dixie Dynamite.
Yes, Dixie Dynamite. I mean, the first thing that strikes you as he's making his way out to the ring is, Jesus Christ, he could not wear that outfit and use that gimmick today.
All I could see was Bob. All I could see was his daddy standing there.
Yeah, no doubt. That's for sure.
This was Scott Armstrong, right? Yeah, it was Scott.
Scott Armstrong.
Worked for the WWE as a referee later on. Really, he, just like all the Armstrongs, a really solid worker.
Have you heard any of the long rants that Cornette goes on about Tim Horner? I had no idea he had such ill will of Tim Horner until this recent years.
I have, and it just totally shocked me. And you know what? I've always know that if Tim's in a match, even when he worked as a squash, I was like, this might be a good match. This might be a good match. And then after listening to Jimmy, and I hate to say this, but after listening to Jimmy, I thought, what a piece of shit. Tim Horner, when he came on the screen, I was like, dude, you don't even know Tim Horner. Why are you calling him a piece of shit? But yeah, like a lot of weird stuff happened there.
Yeah, I was really surprised, and I thought, Tim Horner was pretty much universally always thought of as a pretty good worker and a pretty decent guy. And I listened to some of those rants, and I'm kind of like you. When he came out, I kind of rolled my eyes, especially when he had the foam, lightning bolt in his hand, because I know Cornette told some stories about those. But I was like, fucking Tim Horner. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. But Cornette is so passionate when he buries people, you almost automatically get drawn into his side on it.
And we both giving Tim Horner, you got heat with me and Gene, motherfucker. Tim, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but go on YouTube, try to find Tim Horner, Jim Cornette. One of the things is, after listening to Jimmy, Tim was one of those typical guys who probably thought his importance was much more than it was really. His worth was, and his importance in the business. And me and you've run into a bunch of those guys, right?
Oh God, yes. And this match here was probably one of maybe only a small handful of babyface matches that ever took place in Smoky Mountain. Because I've heard Jim Cornette say a million times, and I know you have too, that there's really no money in babyface matches, and it's hard to get them over. And so, of course, I picked the show that leads the show off with a babyface match, but. Overall, I didn't think it was a bad match.
No, both guys are solid workers. I like the match. I like Dutch and Bob Caudle, Dutch Mantel, Bob Caudle, actually on commentary. Excellent duo. I'm going to tell you, probably one of the most, in my opinion, underrated duo commentators that we've ever had. I really love those two together. I
agree, and I really think it's a crime that Dutch hasn't had a color commentary role to this day, because I think he could have really brought a lot to a lot of shows. I don't, maybe not Monday Night Raw. Maybe leans a little towards the southern side, but maybe for Impact or somewhere. Like, I think Dutch could have really, brought a lot to the show. And I know he worked at TNA for years behind the scenes, but I think he could have brought something to the table as a commentator there, because I know he was really fun to watch on all these Smoky Mountain shows he was on.
He actually put himself behind, like, he wouldn't put himself over as much as other announcers would, and he was a heel commentator, so he would put over the heels, but it was really funny. It's like, I didn't see him get out of that chair. We'll talk about that in a minute, but still stuff like that. Yeah. The referee was Brian Hildebrand. I want to say a big shout out to Brian Hildebrand. I got a quick story. The one time I wrestled in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I wrestled on a Friday night. My match was so bad, Gene, it was called an abortion. And then, so Saturday night, I was supposed to work the same guy. Brian volunteered in a Teenage Mutant Ninja suit, by the way. He was a turtle. And I was going to wrestle the turtle, but I got called home because my dad was sick, and I had to fly home. But I missed the opportunity to work Mark Curtis, Brian Hildebrand, whatever you want to call him, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. So I missed that opportunity. I wish I would have been able to work him. So.
Oh wow, that's got to be one of the great missed opportunities of your career right there.
Yeah,
I mean, how fun would that have been?
I told him. I said, look, I cannot work. I'm horrible. He goes, we're just going to do 4 or 5 days. You just listen. We'll go to the finish. And I was like, all right. And so he's
like, you're wrestling a fucking Ninja Turtle, man. It can't get much worse. Okay, you got this.
Great guy. Big deal with the success of Smoky Mountain when they had it. If you got a videotape sent to you, anything like that, any gimmicks, merch, whatever, it was Brian. He sent it to you.
He was the Tommy Dreamer of Smoky Mountain.
He was. Hard worker, too. Just a hard worker. Next, we got Rock and Roll Express in a squash match, but they bring out someone under a sheet.
Again, speaking of things you couldn't do in 2020.
Well, you can bring him under the sheet, but you can't let Jim Cornette do the commentator about it. You know, he can't say, we know that's David Duke. And if you don't know who David Duke is, go ahead and Google that guy. We know it's David Duke. He said something else, too. I can't remember. He said something else, Slide, about the sheet and KKK. But you had the Rock and Roll did the squash. The guy under the sheet was there. And then I had to go and look at this, but he's calling Stan and Dr. Tom Pritchard the Heavenly Bodies with Bobby Eaton. And I did not remember it was Stan and Dr. Tom that started the Heavenly Bodies.
Yep. For the first year or two, it was Stan and Tom Pritchard, and then eventually Stan decided to leave the business, and that's when they slipped Jimmy Del Rey in there. But yeah, the early version was Stan and Tom. And
I love Jimmy Del Rey, too. Just such a solid worker. That was a really good team. I don't remember this angle. I knew what was coming because, thank you, YouTube, for putting a face on one of the videos so we knew who was under the sheet. But Cornette comes up and hits the sheet a couple times, kind of kicks that sheet, pulls it off, and is fantastic in the reaction as it's AA Arn Anderson under the sheet.
Well, I'm not going to lie. That was why I picked this one, because I remember reading about that in the magazines back in the day and being just fascinated at the idea of Bobby and Arn, who were working for WCW at the time, being in Smoky Mountain and thinking, holy crap, to be a fan at that show, and all of a sudden there's Arn Anderson there, and you didn't expect to see him on a Smoky Mountain show. And but I couldn't. I've seen this show over the years at different times, but I really didn't remember much about it. So I saw, just like you said, I was scrolling through YouTube, saw Arn Anderson's face, and I go, that's the one I'm picking right there. And I immediately sent you the link.
That ain't fair, man. That ain't fair. Go, what the hell? Really good interview from Arn. Really good angle. I actually went back and listened to Arn from Conrad's show with him and Conrad to listen to him talk about this. It was two or 3 weeks. He said he had such a good time, and they talk about the Bluegrass Brawl here. He said he got a huge payday, and that Cornette was very, very nice. Loved to work with him, and the thing with him and Bobby, what they did with that, he loved doing that. I love that. He makes mention of Bobby, that Bobby should have been his friend. These other two, Cornette and these other two, shouldn't, but Bobby should be his friend, and blah, blah, blah. Just really good. Ended up, by the end of the show, we know the Stud Stable is going to be involved in this too. So you got the Stud Stable, Rock and Roll Express, Stud Stable with Dutch Mantel, Rock and Roll Express with Arn Anderson, and they had the Heavenly Bodies. They were calling Bobby part of the Heavenly Bodies at the time, and all three of them in a big brawl, and that's on YouTube too. If you get a chance, it's really good. All right, man, let's take a quick commercial. We come back. We're going to start talking about Down and Dirty with Dutch Mantel.
Championship Wrestling, presented by Pro Shingle, is brand new every Saturday at high noon on CW30.
Don't miss one full hour of the best pro wrestling action. Follow us at CW30 Wrestling.
We'll see you on Saturday.
Down and Dirty with Dutch. So what'd you think about this?
I always enjoyed this segment of the show. Like I said, I'm just a big fan of Dutch in general, but this one in particular was entertaining. I remember watching these before, and I was always entertained by Ron Wright, but I've recently took up listening to the Ron Fuller Studcast, and he's got a lot of stories about Ron and Don Wright and everybody from the Knoxville territory back then, and him and the Dirty White Boy doing their Yankee gimmick is fun stuff. And, of course, him being in the wheelchair, and I'll let you kind of tell the clip.
Well, yeah, he does the gimmick where he's in the wheelchair, and then when he's in the wheelchair forever, and then he finally jumps up. I think at this point of doing this, I was kind of tired of seeing it because I've seen it in all the other stuff. But it's better when you wait when it's a big angle. So I think they actually turned this to where he was doing it on a regular basis. I don't know. Ron Wright interview, love to listen to him. I never seen Ron Wright other than in the wheelchair. So I would kind of like to go back and see some of the old stuff as him as a worker. I don't know whether he's a good worker or not, but I have listened to some of the older stuff about him. There's almost everybody that talks about him has good things to say.
Well, he was famous for his chisel, as he called it, his foreign object that he would bust people open with. And if you believe Ron Fuller, it was usually legitimately busting people open with it. And I remember seeing him on USA Championship Wrestling, the promotion that Fuller had in 1988 there in Knoxville, where he come out looking like Dr. Demento, for the people who know who that is.
Yeah, man, I love that promotion. That was one of the first. Wasn't that where the first time we seen Jamie Dundee and he was wearing the Bill Dundee? Yes.
The Bill Dundee starter kit. Yeah.
Yes. We call it the crowd was calling him Gumby. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yes.
I actually seen Jamie a weekend when he was working Jonesboro. He wasn't working Jonesboro. He was working the gimmicks table because he hadn't even really got into business. And I went over and called him Gumby and shook his hand. He was like, "Man, I can't believe you seen that." I was like, "Yeah." The guys didn't really get all the tape trading that we were actually doing. They didn't understand that was happening.
Yeah, that was something they discussed on one of the recent, Ron Fuller Studcasts. Was he was talking about, the guy asked him, like, well, how did you deal with, TV bleeding over into other territories where guy just got his neck broke in your territory, he's out 6 months, but he's on TV in Memphis immediately and stuff like that. And he said that wasn't a big problem for his territory. That, like, maybe where I was at in Aberdeen, we had Memphis and Continental, so there were some instances like that, like, hey, wait a minute, Austin Idol's injured. Now he's running Jerry Lawler's nuts in the post. But I guess maybe he wasn't really aware. But yeah, there was a tape trading affected that a lot. But I guess that was a small percentage of us super fans,
Yeah. I remember when I had met and talked with like a Q&A with Lance Russell one time, and he was just in shock because so many people, and he mentioned it to Bowden too, that when he went to WCW, everybody knew who he was, and he was, how do you know who I am? Oh, we've been trading tapes for years. So up next, we had Tracy Smothers in a squash match. Tracy looked damn good here. I forget how good of a worker he actually was. Loved his finish, but man, then he brought in the ring those stupid kids. I hate when they do that with the babyface.
And again, talking about things that couldn't happen in 2020.
No.
Rosie walks through the room again, and she's like, is that a group of kids giving Tracy Smothers a rebel flag? And I was like, you damn right, it's 1993 in a very different world and time right there. She's like, holy shit, that's wild.
Well, his other one had been messed up. These kids are trying to be nice to him. Come on, Gene, don't. But Tony Atlas used to do this on Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I just hate it. I don't know why. I hated seeing all those kids.
Kids would come in and give Tony Atlas a rebel flag on Georgia Championship.
Yeah, you should have seen that one. That was a good one. So,
bastard kids, that was pretty insensitive.
Well, they were from Georgia. What the hell? We got a videotape. Do what?
As long as he got to sniff their shoes afterwards.
Oh, yeah, I forget about that about Tony until people until someone like you reminds me. All I can think, I was not a fan of Tony Atlas, and I want to tell you why. It was the kids. That's the only thing. I used to hate that so much. And so every time he would get a title shot, or if he would get a title shot, I'd be like, I would be for the heel champion. I don't want him to win. So we had a clip with Kevin Sullivan and Chris Adams. I didn't catch where that was from. Where was that from?
I think it was from Knoxville, or maybe one of the Kentucky towns. I was kind of fading in and out at this point because it was kind of late when I watched it. But the biggest thing I just remember is thinking, I did not remember Chris Adams ever wrestling in Smoky Mountain. It had to be like just a couple of shots here and there, because I don't think he was really a regular on the roster or anything.
Yeah, I thought it was like something. At one point, I thought, well, there's a clip from Puerto Rico or something, but they were trying to get over Sullivan as a monster because he had popped Chris Adams' eye out. That's something to talk about. So then here's one of the parts that I think is so funny, and this is one of those things for Jim Cornette. He'll insult a bunch of people about stupid stuff that they do, but he brings out poor Bob Armstrong out there to explain a match. Did you understand anything that they were talking about? All the options of those matches that could happen?
It was some of the most convoluted shit that, I mean, you would have had to rewound it 3 or 4 times and made notes and then read back over them a couple of times before you could even think to try to explain it on this podcast. And it really reminded me of, like, in the South, be it, here, Memphis, different places, how crazy and convoluted a lot of times the stipulations got. I mean, you think of some of those matches in, Memphis where it was like 6-man, 8-man tags, and it's like, well, if this guy gets pinned, he gets his head shaved. If this guy pins, he has to eat dog food. And if this guy pins this guy, then he has to get his head shaved while he eats dog food in the back of his wife's car. I mean, like, it just gets crazy. And yeah, I sit there listening at like, what? Like,
I feel so sorry for Bob. He's trying to explain this horse shit. I wrote horse shit. You rolled dice. And then if you rolled the dice the correct number, blah, blah, blah. I was like, really? And then big fucking Brian Clark, he's huge. I just never think about him being that big. But, man, he tired over Sullivan and Bob Armstrong.
All I could think throughout this was like, if they come out on AEW next Wednesday night and did this exact match, he would shit on them for an entire 4-hour podcast. Yes. And yet here he is in Smoky Mountain, the guy who did this and brought us a fucking wrestling mummy and Ninja Turtles is shitting on how goofy people are booking wrestling in 2020. But
amen. That's the way I thought. I think at this point, from this point of the show and rest of the show was just god awful. It was just nothing I really liked. They started talking about, except, I got to hear Robert Fuller at the very end. But
I was just about to say, now please tell me you stayed for the Robert Fuller promo.
Yes. But we talked about, I'm not going to pronounce this guy's name right, his last name, Victor
Quiones.
There we go. Victor Quiones. I've heard all kinds of things about him, and hanging around Dutch. Dutch would call him Vic. Just hear him talk about Victor all the time. I went back to try to see what Corny thought about Victor. Since he did work with him and everything, he loved the guy. He said the guy was awesome with him. Brought in people that he needed to bring in, and everything was. And he sent people to Puerto Rico at the time, and real good working relationship. He had Crash the Terminator and Miguel Perez Jr., who I never liked. He really reminds me of he's a spot monkey that can't do the spots, is what I feel like.
God almighty, he was too big to be trying to do. Like, they botched up enough stuff in that match that even being taped and edited, you still could see, you could see that where it was edited. Like, but some of the, like, he went for the, like, when he went to when Hugh Morris went to press him, I'm like, he is not going to, and all of a sudden we get like a 6-second shot of a kid out in the crowd. And you can see the kid's mouth moving, like, almost like the kid was saying, you fucked up. But, and then those flips, and then the flip over the rope to the floor. And I was like, come on, man. Like, you are too big to be trying to do these fucking lucha spots. Like, come on.
Yeah, and then Crash the Terminator was Hugh Morris. And then we had Night Stalker Sullivan jump in and start beating on them, too. Again, freaking Night Stalker Brian Clark, that motherfucker was huge. I was just like, I didn't really think, I'd like to see him up against Robert, because Fuller's a big old man too, so I'd like to see him up against him. Then the show ended with the Stud Stable interview with Robert Fuller.
Okay, so I love Robert Fuller. I've always been a fan of his. I always loved Colonel Parker. Thought he was just extremely entertaining. I don't think the other times I have seen this episode, I don't know if I just, like, in the middle of the freaking General Erection / Miguel Perez match, I always just turned it off and went like, oh, fuck this. But I've never seen this promo. And so when Fuller starts in about, he got the IRS on his ass, and all these women are walking out on him, but he ain't going to do that Von Erich thing, and puts a fucking finger gun to his head. I was like, holy shit.
My mouth just went wide open. I was like, wait.
I had to rewind it to make sure. Yeah. Like I said, this was like 1:30 in the morning this morning. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, I'm loopy. And I rewound it and listened to it again. I was like, holy shit, that's crazy.
I'll tell you what, when we go off the air here after my stupid catchphrase, after we get done, I'll play that clip so everybody can hear. Robert, no one has ever talked about that interview either, which is kind of went under the radar. All right, so I got to ask you, was it really that good?
So I've watched a lot of Smoky Mountain that I thought was really good, that I enjoyed. This episode's not one of them. The first match wasn't bad. Of course, you got the Rock and Roll Express squash, which wasn't bad. Tracy Smothers is great in this time frame. But with the cheesy shit with the kids coming in at the end and the Perez and Hugh Morris being the main event, I got to say for this time period, I think 92 was a really good time period for Smoky Mountain. I think there was a stretch in 94 that got good again. But as for this particular episode, no, it was not really that good in my opinion.
I agree. I think it was actually like split right down the middle. It started probably when we started the commercial. I liked Tracy, I liked Dutch, but then it just started getting worse and worse. I loved the very first part of it. If it would have continued to go like that, we probably would have said great. I kind of want to go in the middle on this one, but if I'm really going to answer it, I'm going to say nah, probably not. Great angle, one of those angles, and Arn says that it was no one would have ever expected that was in the crowd or watching TV that wasn't spoiled would have expected it to be him, and that's one of the reasons he liked it so much.
Oh, yeah. Who in 1993, who would have ever pegged Arn Anderson teaming with the Rock and Roll Express in Smoky Mountain? It had to just be an absolute shock. And you could tell by the reaction of the crowd that it was. And like you said, Cornette taking the ass bump and, selling it like Godzilla was under the sheet was perfect.
Oh, yeah. Corny was just perfect. And in the interview building up to it, trying to make him not to be a big deal, that was done real well, too. All right, guys, same bad time, same bad channel on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. And as everyone knows, I love my mama.